Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Finland once again, and that of course means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the latest instalment of the Riku box. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Riku Sanaxanaho, my Finnish beer mule. It's thanks to him that you guys are getting to enjoy a series of Finnish reviews here on Rampant Lion Reviews. He's a lovely guy, he always picks me out some really interesting stuff. He's very knowledgeable about his beer, of course, and the beers that he sent me this time, the box has been very good so far, and we still have a good number of beers to work our way through over the next little while. So I hope that you guys continue to enjoy these reviews as much as I enjoy filming them, and a massive kipis and kiitos to Riku for making all of these possible. But yeah, for this review today, we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a number of times before. We've had some really interesting beers from them actually, and I would describe this brewery as being very solid all round. But the beer itself is a style that I don't have too many reviews of on the channel, if memory serves me correctly. We're talking maybe about 5 or something like that. And within that style category, it's also got a twist that we've never had from this style on the channel before either. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Espoo, which is just to the northwest of Helsinki, the Finnish capital in the south of the country, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Salama Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Cloud Cuckoo. It comes in at 12% ABV, and this one is a wheat wine, but this beer is also the bourbon barrel-aged edition of Cloud Cuckoo as well. So yeah, this should be really interesting. I honestly couldn't tell you the last time that I had a wheat wine here on the channel. I think we might have had one from Bibliothek in Gothenburg fairly recently, but yeah, that's got to have been at least 6 months ago. Not a style that you come across all that often. The first time I discovered wheat wine was actually in Japan, and that was St. Gallen Brewery out there, if I remember correctly. But there are a good few of these in California in the US from what I understand, but definitely our first Finnish example of a wheat wine, and the first ever bourbon barrel aged edition of one that we've had before as well. So this should be something quite quirky and interesting. Big shout out to the guys at Salama Brewing Company as well. If memory serves me correctly, this was one of the beers that they actually gave me for free when I went up to the brewery to film the little out and about video that we did back in July or August or whenever it was, I forget. But yeah, big thank you to them for giving me this beer to review on the channel as well. But let's crack on and see what this one is going to have in store for us as well. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the links to my other reviews that I've done from Salama Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. If you go into the channel homepage, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from your local area, they should pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. And yeah, this one will be found on the Finnish playlist, and there will be many more added to that over the coming years, I'm sure. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Salama Brewing Company once again. So, Salama Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Espoo in Finland, just a little bit to the northwest of Helsinki, and the company was founded back in 2019 by a group of friends. So the men behind the company are Christian Holmlund, Jaakko Ailio, Johannes Järvinen, and Ville Sarikoski. So Christian is the CEO, and he has a background in running small and medium enterprises, SMEs, whereas Jaakko is the brewer, and Johannes takes care of the bureaucracy side of things, and Ville acts as the art director of the company. And you can see Salama Brewing, of course, have a very distinctive style of artwork. But the brewery is very close to the IKEA and Jorvi Hospital out to the north of Espoo, and their brewing equipment actually came from China, and they have a theoretical brewing capacity of around 130,000 litres of beer per year, although over the course of the first year they brewed around 50,000 litres. But they recently opened up a sort of terrace at the brewery, if you like. It's not quite a tap room. But you can buy the cans of beer there and sit outside and drink them, which is quite nice in the summer. And Yakko said initially that they were going to focus mainly on lighter styles of beer, such as pale ales and IPAs, and a bit of double IPAs as well, and have some sour beers. But in recent times, they have been doing quite a few stouts and barley wines and stuff like this too, from what I've seen, and they have been adding barrel aging into it as well. But apparently, once they get everything to the stage that they want, they're hoping to export around 70% of their beer. Remember, Finland is only about 4.5 million people, if memory serves me correctly. So these guys will export quite a bit of their volume, and they've started doing that as well. But as of January 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 180 different kinds of beer, and they also have their tap room in the centre of Helsinki these days as well, which is worth a visit, I have to say. But the other thing we haven't mentioned yet is the name of the brewery. Salama, when it's translated from Finnish into English, means lightning, and you can see this on the artwork of the brewery as well. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Salama Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that I think is everything that we need to say about Salama Brewing. Let's get on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. It's kind of interesting artwork on this. If you look at it, it looks like, cherries and raspberries or something like that, but it also reminds me of, what we used to see in chemistry, the kind of crystal, the atom structures and things like that when we were talking about the distribution of particles and so on. But yeah, so quite cool in that sense that they've got raspberries next to atoms. I wonder if that's the idea with the artwork. But yeah, there you can see, there is the Salama Brewing Company symbol there, the cloud with the lightning coming out of it. You can see bourbon barrel aged cloud cuckoo, and it says a little bit on the side here as well, a euphoric journey into sweet delirium. Go down the rabbit hole with our marshmallow, raspberry, strawberry and vanilla enriched sparkling wheat wine, bourbon barrel aged for 12 months. So this one may well have the adjuncts in it, although in fairness, it just says that it contains barley and wheat, this one. So yeah, I'm not sure if they have added the adjuncts into that, because normally they would put that on the side of the can as well. But plain silver top on the can there. This is a 440 milliliter can, incidentally, and I actually have no idea what this beer would cost. But if you are watching from somewhere that is not Finland, of course, one of the big places you can get a hold of the Salama Brewing Company beers is Beerdome. .nl from the Netherlands, and Salama Brewing, we're starting to get a couple of their beers through Systembolaget here in Sweden as well, which is nice to see. But yeah, as I said earlier, this one is a 12% wheat wine. A wheat wine is essentially a barley wine that has a portion of its malt base. It's brewed in the same way, but a portion of the malt base, usually 30% plus, is wheat. So that is how you define it as a wheat wine. It's basically a wheat barley wine in a sense. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. The bourbon barrel aged edition of the Cloud Cuckoo wheat wine at 12% ABV from Salama Brewing in Espoo in Finland. Let's see what this is going to have in store for us. Oh, I think this is going to be nice. So we've got a good chunk of the beer out into the glass just now, and I think that'll be enough to take a look at the appearance. So before the head disappears, we'll have a wee look at that. So as you guys can see, the beer is poured with about a third, somewhere between a 1/3 and a 1/2 finger frothy, I would say kind of fawn coloured head. It is starting to fade away right in the middle of the glass there. And it's just leaving a nice ring around the edge, which is kind of interesting. But you can see there's quite a few sort of medium-sized bubbles there, and I would describe it as a sort of fawn coloured head there. So yeah, medium-sized bubbles on the head and a kind of fawn sort of thing going on. But in terms of the colour of this beer, it's got a lovely, yeah, it has a lovely sort of reddish tint to it. This one, it really isn't the colour that I would have expected from a wheat wine, to be honest with you. But again, remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put into it as well can affect the colour of it. So yeah, that might be something that's at play in this one. We'll be able to tell when we taste the beer though. But yeah, I would guess that a lot of the colour from this one is coming from the barley malt. Sweet malt usually kind of stays the sort of yellow colour, to be honest with you. But there might well be some adjuncts and things. I'm not sure how much the bourbon barrel would affect the colour of a wheat wine either. But definitely when you shine the light through this beer, this has actually got a lovely kind of reddish tint to it. I'm not sure how well you guys are going to see that on the camera right enough, but the red that the beer has isn't too far away from what you get on the can, and I wonder if that is actually intentional with this one. So yeah, it's got this lovely kind of rubyish colour to it. As I say, if we shine the light through it, it's not even like, you know, chestnutty or mahogany. This is more of a kind of dark ruby coloured beer, but if you take it away from the light, it is actually quite a dark looking affair, this one. But yeah, as you can see, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, I have to say, this beer does look pretty damn nice. Like I say, darker than I would have expected for a wheat wine. But yeah, as I say, it's a bit difficult to remember exactly what colour the wheat wines I've had have been before. I think the one from, in fairness, when I think about it, the one from Bibliothek was a kind of darker brown colour like this as well. And I think maybe the one from St. Gallen in Japan was like that too. So yeah, interesting. I have to say interesting. But the beer itself, I should point out, it has a little bit natural haze to it, but otherwise it is pretty clear, I have to say. But yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of this one. We can go on and have a little look at the aroma and see what it's all about. Let's do that. Oh yeah, I'm going to say straight away, aroma of this is absolutely lovely, but you guys, having watched the channel for any length of time, will know that I'm a big sucker for these big sweet beers. But the first impression of this one is it's just big, boozy, brown sugary. You've got a nice little bit of fruity character to it as well, and you can pick out a little remnant of a green component. This is a lovely, lovely smelling beer, I have to say. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That really is. You know, one of the things we've had from Finland throughout this series, you know, and it's just the way we have to do these boxes right enough, but it always turns out well. Most of the Finnish reviews that I've done are big, boozy, heavy things like this, and that's just because, you know, Riku gathers up beer for me across the year, so we need things that will last. And you know, this one obviously would fit into that category as well. But the aroma of this one does actually remind me quite a wee bit of the Bloviator that we had from Hisi recently. That was very good as well. But yeah, let's break this down and actually describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of this beer, you've got that lovely smooth woodiness coming out of this one, which I really enjoy. You can smell that smooth American oak in there. You've got a little bit of vanilla to that as well, and you can also smell the bourbon spirit on top. As I've said many a time on the channel before, for me, American bourbon is a good little bit sweeter than Scotch whiskey, so that is always something to be aware of when you're looking at these beers. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is very, very nice, I have to say. So you can get, as I say, the smooth American oak, the little bit of vanilla in there. You can smell a bit of the bourbon spirit on top of that. And then you start to get the other parts of the wheat wine on top of that. So for me, you've got a lovely kind of sort of brown wholemealy bread crust sitting on top of that. Then you get quite a dense, you also get quite a little bit of a dense brown bready character to it. And you can smell the wheat just thickening out this beer throughout. And in the back of the nose, you actually do get a little bit of a wheaty, you actually do get a little touch of a wheaty, bitey character coming out of the beer, which is really quite interesting. I've not noticed that before in wheat wines, because normally, as I say, the wheat wine, the barley wine, is essentially, it was originally the big brother of the double IPA, the barley wine. So yeah, with wheat wines, as I say, not a style that I'm madly experienced in, but it's just interesting with this one that I am noticing a little bit of that wheaty bitiness in there. On top of the kind of big wheaty white bready character that you've got though, it does have a little touch of dryness in that sense. You are getting a lot of brown sugar out of this one. It's quite a sweet brown sugar, like it's a lovely oily sweet caramel. There's a little bit of leathery character within that as well. You've got a little bit of a leathery brown sugary note, and also the sweeter caramel on top of that. So to me, when you've got that leathery note, that really indicates a slightly longer wort boil. But there are a couple of like almonds and things in there as well. There is a little bit of a nutty character starts to come out of this beer from the brown sugars too. There's maybe even a little hint of like a brandy soaked fruit loaf or something like that to this beer, which I personally find quite interesting. So yeah, aroma wise, I think this beer is pretty damn interesting. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like this. I certainly do like this. Yeah. So on the the malty and yeasty side of things, I don't know if there's too much more to say about it, to be honest with you. As I said, you've got this kind of like brandy soaked fruit loaf type thing coming out of this beer, but then you've also got the fruity character coming out of it too. So for me, there's a good little bit of sultana to this one. You've got a bit of datey character as well, but then you have got sweeter things on top of that. You've got raisins, you've got like prunes, and you are getting some of the kind of more like candied strawberry and raspberry type notes out of this one too. Yeah, so it's got the oily, candied raspberry strawberry notes to it, definitely. I can see why they're saying that. There's maybe just a little hint of cherry to this one too. But as I say, like underneath it's a more dry fruity character. Yeah, dates, prunes, sultanas, a little bit of dried apricot in there as well. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. So yeah, aroma wise, I think this is good. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think it goes together very well, this one. As I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of this. I'm just quite surprised how kind of brown sugary and stuff this one is, but it's got a lovely big oily fruity character to it. So as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we taste this one. I've been looking forward to this beer for a good wee while, and we do have another big thing from Salama, or two big things actually, from Salama that we need to look at. One of them came through Systembolaget in Sweden. So yeah, let's do this. So this one is the Cloud Cuckoo Bourbon Barrel Aged Edition, a 12% bourbon barrel aged wheat wine from Salama Brewing Company in Espoo near Helsinki in the south of Finland. Let's get stuck into this one. Slanja, skål, cheers, kipis, and kiitos once again. Big shout out to Riku and the guys at Salama for giving me this beer, I should say. Oh, now, I'm going to say, that's quite interesting. It's quite a wee bit different from what I was expecting from the aroma, I have to say. Yeah. Yeah, no, this one, I have to say, it really does have a little bit of that, it really does have a wee bit of a kind of like sort of almost like pastry type thing to it as well. I think there have been some adjuncts put in this one. Let's have a wee look actually, and we'll see maybe the original, maybe it'll tell you about the original Cloud Cuckoo just on Untappd. So let's see, start on my computer. Yeah, the original Cloud Cuckoo, does it say? Doesn't say whether they've got the adjuncts in this one. I think it just says, I think by the sounds of it, yeah, just by the sounds of the description there, it's exactly the same as on this can. I think they must have added some adjuncts into this beer, which would kind of make sense going by the flavour, because when you take the flavour in, it actually, you can really just taste the kind of sort of candy sugar, if you like, from the marshmallows. The fruits, I think, are a wee bit less obvious, but it does have a wee bit of impact sharpness to it, this one. So yeah, this is definitely, I think it's definitely an adjunct barley wine, but I was just confused by it that they didn't put that on the ingredients in the can. I would have thought they would have to do that. But anyway, we'll take the beer as it goes. But yeah, an interesting one for sure. So yeah, this beer definitely has a bit more of a twist to it than I thought it was going to. Um, yeah. So, where do we start with this one then? But as I say, the first impression of this beer is a big oily thing. It's definitely got a good little bit of that kind of candied character to it for sure. And then it also has a little bit of a more, yeah, it has a little bit of that kind of sharper fruit that you'd have from the adjuncts too, but very, very smooth beer other than that. Let's just break it down though and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So, middle third of your palate with this one then. You've got a lovely, you can feel the base of the, you can feel that the base of that middle third of your palate, you get that lovely smooth American oak in there. So I do like how that goes together, a lovely smooth American oaky backbone. On top of the, or toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a little touch of vanilla coming out of the beer, which I think is very, very nice. You can feel that in there. Then you've got the bourbon spirit just sitting on top of the wood, which is great. So yeah, I do like that too. Yeah, so the oaky woody character in this one kind of really lingers into the aftertaste, but then above all of that bourbon spirit, it's interesting because you actually have this kind of almost like this cakey dense layer to the beer as well. So above that you've got this kind of cakey, it's almost like a kind of caramel cake or something like that. You have that layer above the bourbon brown sugar. Then it's very dense and very kind of oily, but then you've got a kind of wholemeal brown bready character above that, and then you have the more kind of white bready, you have the more kind of white bready note coming out of it as well. So yeah, it's quite interesting, this beer. It's got a really dense character in that middle third of the palate there. It's actually quite straight shooting in that way. You've got the wood, the bourbon spirit, a little bit of vanilla in there, potentially a little bit of nuttiness actually coming out of the wood too, like almonds or pecans or something. But then above that you've got this dense, cakey sort of layer to the beer, and then you also have and then you also have above that a more dense kind of caramelly, you've got a more kind of dense caramelly brown bread, caramel cakey sort of thing, sorry, then a wholemeal brown bready layer, then you've got a white bread layer that's actually very smooth, and I would suggest that that's probably the wheat element of the malt base kind of showing its head, if you like. So yeah, above that, above the kind of wheaty layer, you start to get all of the, you do start to get more of the kind of brown sugary and sweet things coming out of the beer too. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. Yeah, so on top of the wheaty layer, toward the front of that middle, toward the front of that middle third of your palate, then above the wheaty layer, you do get a little bit of that marshmallow. You do get a little bit of that marshmallow type quality coming out of the beer, which I do certainly enjoy. And then on top of that, you start to get the brown sugars from the beer. So you can feel the brown sugars are kind of in this sort of cup type thing, and you can feel the wheat just pushes up the side of the of that cup. So you can feel that the base layer of this little brown sugary cup is quite the base there. This kind of brown sugary cup is like a sort of leathery. It is a kind of leathery brown sugar sort of thing in there, which I do enjoy. And then you've got the sweet layer of caramel underneath that too. And then as you move further up, you can feel there's a little circle in the dead center of your palate there that is more of a kind of straight up butterscotchy type quality. So yeah, the way that this goes together in that sense for me is really interesting. Yeah, so the brown sugary notes in this beer, yeah, from the top, you've got a little bit of a butterscotchy note in there. You get the sweet caramel underneath, and then you get the leathery brown sugars, but you can feel the kind of boozy character of this beer, which at 12% is not a surprise, of course. It really isn't. And you get more and more of the boozy character the further into the aftertaste you go, and you get more of the wheat out of this beer as well, and the kind of marshmallowy flavour that they're talking about too. It's really interesting that. I do wonder if they have just put a little bit of, they've just melted up some marshmallows or just chucked bags of marshmallows into the wort boil with this one. That really would not surprise me with the kind of candied sugary flavour that you have in the middle of the palate with this one. So yeah, very quirky wheat wine this. It's definitely not like straight shooting in the sense of in terms of its flavour. So I do quite like how that goes together. Yeah, interesting. So let's have a wee look at the back third of the palate then. I think we've covered the middle third of the palate in quite a bit of depth. So yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate. So yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate. You've got a really nice, how would you say? You've got a little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. It's like a sweet brandy soaked brown bread that's in there too. But then on the back third of your palate, you've got similar layers to what you had before in the middle third of your palate. So you can feel the nice, smooth bourbon, American oak, I should say. Sorry, you've got that layer there, but of course it feels a little bit drier. I mean, more dry and bitter flavors come out further back on the palate for me, and sweeter flavors come out further forward. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of smooth American oaky character. Then you've got the bourbon sugar layer on top of that, and then you can feel that dense sort of caramel cakey note coming out of this one. But I would say that cakey note is nowhere near as sweet on the back third of your palate as it is further forward. But then above that you feel the wholemeal brown bready note, and that's a lot more airy. Then you've got a more dense wheaty character sitting on top of that, and I would say that layer is actually a little bit more compact, if that makes sense. You get more of a compact density to the beer from that particular perspective, but you have got a little bit of that wheaty bitiness. Above all of that, of course, though, you start to get some of the yeasty characteristics out of the beer, and it has this kind of dense, but yet still, it's got this sort of more dense farmhousey bready character to it. There's a little bit of like wood to it, there's a little bit of honeycomb and a little touch of spice as well, which I personally think is really interesting. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together from that perspective is really quite cool for me. So yeah, definitely back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is really quite tall, and then as you come further forward it just condenses down and squashes together a wee bit more. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense, I think is it's really quite nice. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like that. I do like that for sure. So I think that's covered everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer, and I can say I'm feeling this beer, the booze in this one going to my head a little bit, actually. So yeah, it's quite funny. But from a 12% wheat wine, you kind of have to expect that. But anyway, let's go on and talk about the hoppy and fruity side of this beer. But we have to remember this is a barrel aged beer. Quite a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one over the course of the barrel aging, but you can still detect the remnants of the green component in this beer. So in the back corners of the palate, you've got a lovely little bit of you've got a lovely little bit of an earthy character in there, but as you move further forward, you can feel the smoothness. You get a little touch of herbal note, and as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic in that sense too, which I do really quite like. Yeah, but the hoppy character, as I say, you can detect it there, and it gets a little bit more bitter into the aftertaste you go, but you can feel it has kind of muted over the course of the barrel aging with this one. But round the front curve of the palate, it's got a little bit of a lighter, grassy sort of character to it as well. But yeah, the way it goes together, I think, is really nice in that sense. But yeah, a little bit of lighter grassy character with a wee bit of zestiness around the front curve of the tongue. So yeah, I do like how all of that goes together. In terms of the fruity side of things in this beer, then we'll talk about the front third of your palate now. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of kind of build up there, and it's like a kind of caramel shortbread or something. So you can feel that between the border of front and middle third of your palate there, and that's quite interesting. But the base of that front third of your palate has the American oak, the smooth American oak there, a little bit of the bourbon spirit, but then, as I say, also this kind of cakey base, which I really quite like. But above all of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And I think that goes together really well. That goes together really quite nicely as well. So yeah, interesting stuff. As I say, the fruity character in this beer is interesting. I do wonder if they have, because the fruity notes in this beer are very, very sharp in a way, and you can kind of feel them round the sides of the palate too. And that does make me wonder if they've added a little bit of adjunct fruit into the beer before they've barrel aged it. So yeah, let's just kind of keep that in mind as we go forward. But yeah, in terms of the fruity notes of the beer then, at the back of that front third of your palate, you do have a little bit of this kind of cakey, brandy soaked, bready character coming out of this beer. So you've got a wee bit of that going on for sure. And then yeah, you've got some, I wouldn't say raisins in this beer, but you have got like a little bit of a sharper raspberry note above it. But then you go further down, you've got prunes. Yeah, you definitely have a little bit of a pruny character in there. You've got some dates, and then you've got sultanas sitting underneath. And as you move further forward, on that palette, you do have a little bit of a more, you do get a little bit of a more kind of dry fruity character. It's almost like a really dry apricot or something. And then as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, you're starting to get a little bit of a fig and a little bit of a black curranty note. And above that, you've maybe just got a little touch of blackberry or something too. So yeah, I think it's really interesting how all of that goes together. Yeah. But like I say, I do wonder if there has been some sort of like strawberry or raspberry note. What are they saying on the side here? It's raspberry and strawberry in this one. So you do get that raspberry sharpness out of the beer, but then the strawberry notes as well kind of linger there. The strawberry is giving it the kind of juiciness, but the raspberry is giving you the more kind of sharp tartness. But you can certainly feel their influence around the kind of front edges of your palate. They are a little bit more, whenever you add fruit into beer as an adjunct, it always suppresses a little bit of the green component of the beer. You can feel the raspberry and strawberry just doing that in this one. So it's quite interesting that has also carried through in the barrel aging as well, actually. So yeah, definitely. It makes sense that you've got a bit more of an oily character in there, but you also have a little bit of it suppressing some of the green component as well. So yeah, definitely a bit of adjunct in this beer for sure. The marshmallow flavour shows you that, the strawberry and raspberry notes show you it, but the vanilla as well. I think the vanilla takes a little bit of a back seat compared to some of the other ones, although within the kind of cakey notes that I was talking about earlier on, that it kind of makes sense. You do get a bit more vanilla out of that, particularly the further into the aftertaste that you go. But yeah, I think that kind of concludes what we need to say about the flavour element of this beer. This is quite an interesting one, but it's certainly not a conventional wheat wine. This has got a lot of kind of unusual and kind of candied character to it. In a sense, there's quite a little bit of pastry character to this beer, if we can call it that too. But certainly interesting, and that's what you have to say about Salama Brewing. They are capable of doing some really interesting beers that will test your palate. But let's just round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. This has been a bit of a longer review because this beer is a little bit, you need to take a bit of time to kind of comprehend what's going on with this one. But let's round off with the mouthfeel. So, mouthfeel wise, for me, this beer is at the bottom end of full bodied. The carbonation is very smooth, it's quite slick, but at the same time it's very oily. In terms of IBUs, I think this one is actually quite low in its IBUs. I think, it's 20, probably about at most. The beer does actually have a good little bit of dry character to it. That's coming from some of the cakey flavours, also from the barrel aging to an extent, and a little bit of the graininess that the beer has as well. But at the same time, it's very thick and sweet, and you've also got those kind of pastry type flavours that I was talking about too. It does have a degree of tartness from the additions of particularly the raspberry, but the strawberry also gives the beer a little bit of oiliness. And yeah, generally speaking, the fruity character that you get out of this beer is a mix of dry fruit and a more oily fruity character as well. So for me, a very oily beer that gets quite dry into the aftertaste, but still very clean at the same time. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about about this beer in terms of mouthfeel, but it's really interesting, this one, and I'm certainly glad that I got to review this. But this is a big boozy beast, and I can feel the alcohol going to my head with this one as well, actually. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about this. This was the Cloud Cuckoo Bourbon Barrel Aged Edition, a 12% wheat wine from Salama Brewing Company in Espoo, near Helsinki in the south of Finland. So yeah, 2 more reviews to come from Salama Brewing over the next few weeks. I hope you guys have enjoyed this one, my first wheat wine in quite a wee while, and certainly my first barrel-aged wheat wine as well. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Salama Brewing Company as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the near future. But until then, slàinte, skål, cheers, see you guys in the next review.